Hey everybody, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ted, and today I'm joined by
Nerdarchist Dave.
And it's that time again. We're talking Critical Role Campaign 2, Episode 15. Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
All right, it's that time again. Is it Friday? We're talking about Critical Role. We're into episode 15 now.
Campaign 2, Episode 15.
And it starts off really cool with the awesome I think they're Dwarven Forge pieces. I mean, that's what they usually use, or unless they have something made up or whatever. They're in Hollywood, so they have plenty of talent out there. And we've personally seen, like, Maze Arcana have people that work on sets build pieces for them. So who knows? You know, it could be for Dwarven Forge, could be something else. But either way, it was amazing. I love the whole, like, setup with the boats and the water.
Yeah, the water looked fantastic, and they had, you know, the two boats with the 7 characters and the cat all in there, you know, heading off down the tunnel, and they're immediately set upon by dark vandals.
Well, yeah, right after Nott tests her ring of water walking, because there's a whole thing about them being concerned whether or not, you know, Nott's going to drown or not. You know, it's just like, I'm not going in there.
I'm going to see it. And she just, you know, casually reaches her foot out to test the water, and, you know, she gets out of the boat, and I'm like, that's it's pretty dangerous. I don't know whether I would be, you know,
that's when you need a giant fish to come up and swallow Nott. And by giant, I mean just slightly bigger than normal.
You know, like I might have made the players in the boat make a deck save as she stepped out to see whether they, you know, maintain their seating or footing or what have you.
Yeah. Well, you know, I guess if it was a bigger character, maybe, but because Nott is
That's
a goblin,
true. That's true,
and small, it's not that big a deal. But Nott does lose her balance and trip, you know, when getting out of the boat. But then we immediately get into combat.
So we get dark mandals, and
not again, because Nott gets wrapped up once again.
So, like, they made the direct correlation to the rug of smothering that they fought a few episodes previously, and it's pretty amusing. I myself, having recently used things where characters were doing stuff in darkness, I'm like, you know, yes, I'm seeing the same effects as they're, you know, challenged by this magical darkness.
Yeah, so wasn't too challenging. I mean, they're dark mandals. They managed to tear through them without too much trouble. And also, like, Nott was, like, instantly, once they started beating on the dark mandal that she was in, was like, am I taking damage for this? No, different kind of monster. But I really love those kinds of monsters. I've always loved piercers, even though it's a stupid concept, but I like them as a monster anyway. Dark mantle is kind of a reimagined version of a piercer, you know, to my mind, and it's a much better designed monster. I love them as well. They make great monsters to use for low level characters, or at later levels they almost become like hazards to your players because they have the ability to generate darkness, and if you have other monsters that can see in the darkness, they all of a sudden they become a real nuisance real fast.
Yeah, so a lot of fun that was had there. As they're fighting these things, the boats are continuing to move, and you see the setup, and at first it's like, oh, you know, what are these weird things off to the side? And, you know, wound up being on Jester's turn, and she's like, I don't like the look of that, as, like, the viney stone stones like start slowly dragging themselves towards the shore, and she's like, nope, I'm not dealing with that one bit. And, you know, she makes a strength check, and she just plummets the boat, you know, further down the tunnel, getting away from these things. So
Yasha follows suit.
Yasha follows suit. I don't recognize the mini, so I don't know exactly what they were, but I was intrigued to try and find out, and we may never know.
The only monster I could think of is like the Gallidur, but like that would have been like they would have been dead.
Yeah,
if that's what it was. That monster's way too strong, especially when dealing with dark mandals as well. Right. But yeah, but who knows? You know what Matt has cooked up. You know, but yeah, they were able to avoid that. There was a lot of monsters in this session.
Absolutely. So they wind up getting further down the passageway, and as they do so, Caleb notices some, you know, strange rubble, and he's like, all right, guys, it's going to go dark for a moment. And he casts, detect magic to sense, and he's getting this like pinkish purplish vibe off of something in this rubble. So they immediately bank over and start trying to clear this rubble, and they wind up finding an entryway and a stone mounted to the wall in like a sconce that's got like a everlasting light in it.
Yeah, and then they have to clear the rubble, and that kind of like brings them deeper into the adventure, and then they kind of enter like their first like real dungeon for this campaign.
I mean, the mine with the manticore, was sort of like that. But
no, it's not there. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But this one just felt more dungeony for some reason.
Well, it's because when they got into the room, it's like
puzzles and traps and all kinds of stuff.
So they wind up seeing these this open floor, and in doing so, Nott's like, I'm gonna go look for traps, and she doesn't find any and gets hit with a crossbow bolt.
Sort of. Oh, she finds them.
Well, she doesn't locate the trap before it winds up shooting her. Then she gets to the second one. She notices. And she's trying to figure out how to disarm it. So she sees all these holes in the wall, and it's like, well, she makes the proper investigate roll, but she's got to try and find out what she can do to actually stop it. And Matt is like, oh, well, you realize you have something on your person that you can do to stop her up the hole. And she just starts going through her list of stuff, and she's not. She's collected a lot of things. So she winds up shoving the brass doorknob that she stole from the bathhouse into the hole, jams it in there, and he hears the tick, 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 cling, or she does, and the thing grinds and what have you. But Nott doesn't want to leave the brass doorknob there. So she pulls it back out, causing the arrow to half-heartedly fly out. So Matt rolled with disadvantage, and Nott did not get hit by that one.
But I think she got hit by a couple more. The rest of the party got hit by some. It was not a successful run through of this gauntlet for sure. Nott apologizes, like, I'm really good with the string one. I've seen that. It's a classic. It becomes a whole bit.
About, Jester goes into, the falling log. She's like, yeah, perfect. Nott gets hit by the third trap. Yasha gets hit by some arrows, and the party is taking some serious damage before they finally disarm all of these things and allow the party to cross over into the next chamber.
Dun, dun, dun. Is that the puzzle room?
That is indeed the puzzle room, and it's a lot of fun. Matt winds up pulling out some cool arcane props that this is what you see, and there's like a slightly raised stone with these etched symbols in it, and like a half-inch hole that goes on for longer than they can see or ascertain. And nobody does they've got loads of ball bearings, I know this, but nobody goes and drops one in. I was a little saddened by nobody trying to figure that part out.
That might have caused them problems later on. There was also like an apparatus up above and stuff as well.
There was a stone cylinder that came down above this etched stone that had kind of a curved half cylinder head, and then there were 8 markings that were painted onto the wall, and they wind up doing some Arcana checks, and Beau and Fjord put their heads together. And they come up with, these are linked to the 8 schools of magic.
Yeah, and then they eventually come to the conclusion, like, we need more information. Maybe there's something above we can check out. Because there was a stairwell and stuff like that. So they end up going there. And that actually brings them to when they find, like, the whole, like, the impetus for why they came down here in the first place.
So they go up the, all the flights of stairs. We forgot to mention that beyond the rubble off that, there was a spiral staircase. They went down. Now they go all the way up, and they find this other room.
Full of urns and stuff.
Full of urns and, a handful of statuettes that, like, they've got... like alcoves in their eyes, and it was kind of a little weird the way he described it. But when Yasha goes to explore one of these urns, you know, he's like, you think you see something shifting inside, and as you know, she does, Nott pulls out her crossbow, and she's got it trained right towards the urn, and out pops this, you know, glowing orb, and Nott totally crits the attack and annihilates it before it can even damage Yasha further.
Yeah, and it would have hit her too, but I guess like there was some confusion on the damage or whatever. Oh, Nott didn't roll the crit damage,
right?
And
he's like, wait a second, all of the dice are doubled, even the sneak attack?
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, well, then it's dead, and Yasha, you don't take any damage. Also, it's worth noting, too, that now, I don't know if we talked about this previously, but Critical Role, now, every time they roll one, I believe D&D Beyond is donating money to one of their favorite charities, so it's worth $100. They raised several $100 in this episode. Matt actually rolled a couple ones, as well as some players, so...
Yeah, and every time it happens, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to take that natural one, and that's $100 for the charity.
So, you know, that's a nice thing that's going on. You know, they're helping out charity while they're playing the game. You know, I'm kind of surprised, though. Like, for once, Mollymauk did not ask about using his ability that he's been asking about for the past 14 sessions, right? And finally, he gets a monster where I think it would have worked. And he doesn't use it, right? Because I think he needs Incorporeal Undead to do whatever it is he's trying to do. He's like, do I get the spooky field? Do I get the spooky field? No, motherfucker, you don't get the spooky field. But you would have got it this time! But, you know, he's just probably, like, worn out and tired of asking. So, they end up, you know, fighting Will-O-Wisps and beating them.
And Will-O-Wisps are pretty terrible for a low-level party. They have a really high armor class. They're resistant to a lot of different damage types. I've now, you know, come to the thing when I realize what it is, I sometimes look up the monster while I'm watching to see, like, oh, you know, how difficult is this for what they're doing, and it's pretty terrible. And the constant effect of, well, it didn't do as much damage as you think. It was a struggle for them, and that's when they decided they were going to, like, well, what happens if I attack the urn? Because they came out of the urns.
Well, yeah, and that part was really cool because he let them actually defeat them by destroying the urns instead of just defeating the monster, which was a lot of fun. And then also, I was really impressed and happy to see the old school style trap that Matt threw in here with the statues with the enclosed on the eyes. Old school traps were really deadly, but the other thing that was weird about them, like, you had to go out of your way to find them or solve them sometimes, and this was one of those cases because Travis, the Fjord, goes, hey, I want to cover the eyes with coins. And it works. And then Matt's like, make a dex save. And then he fails and falls into a pit full of charred bones and rotted clothing. And, you know, which it kind of worked out for several reasons.
He would have taken, you know, a boatload of falling damage.
It's 3d6, plus if Matt decided landing on, you know, shards of bone does more damage or not. So he would have taken more, but not kind of saved him.
He's like, I throw a feather in this direction, it casts Featherfall. It's like,
yeah.
Nice.
You know, so down there he explores, he actually finds a magic vial. I don't know if we actually learned what that does or not.
It was a potion of necrotic resistance.
Okay, potion of necrotic. Oh, that would have been useful a while ago. The potion of necrotic resistance and, you know, a bunch of jewelry and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool. They also had the urns now, which they used and brought them back with them because they're like, now let's go back. We have some ideas for that puzzle room. Right. So they go back to the puzzle room. They try to solve it one time by just casting one spell on the rod because they had found that rod as well. And they insert the rod and that kind of like interacts with the puzzle. But it doesn't do what they want. They hear all these noises and stuff happening.
It's like slurping and grinding. And eventually the ceiling chamber kind of opens up and drops a gelatinous cube right down on them.
Yeah, but, you know, that being said, Caleb casts a spell, what is it, Earthy Grasp, Maximilian's Earthy Grasp or something like that. restrains it, and they just proceed to beat on it for like 2 rounds before it even gets to do anything, before it breaks free.
Now here's where the like these guys have went through, the entire campaign 1. They're on 15 weeks in campaign 2, and I don't know whether the characters don't view things the same way that I do, or the players don't. But to me, it's like, all right, can we stand back and just use missile fire rather than running up and punching and smacking this thing?
Well, so there's a couple things. One of the things like I thought about instantly is like, why is he making them roll this out? Because when they described the spell first, it sounded like it was trapped for the duration.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if the duration is just shorter than I thought, or if it was you get a saving throw every round. But it did break free eventually and begin attacking them.
Right.
Because like at first I was like, well, if it can't do anything and it's going to be restrained there for a minute, if they, like you said, just did missile fire for a minute, even just Fjord Eldritch blasting and Laura using Sacred Flame,
Mm-hmm.
this thing is just going to die eventually anyway. But but because it did have a chance to get free, and it did get free, that's why, like, okay. But from the player standpoint, why get close if you don't need to? Although not well, I guess it was just restrained, so it didn't even matter for the sneaky damage.
Right.
And Nott did a buttload of damage on it. Yasha hit it for a lot of damage, and eventually they whittled it down and took it out. But not before
it broke free. And as it moves, Matt was trying to, mess with Liam, and it's like, yeah, it swallows your cat. It's like, what? The thing's got 3 hit points. And
also Jester got dropped because she tried to move away from it and got caught by a reaction.
Pseudopod.
A reaction attack of opportunity. She got dropped, and that could have been scary. Had it lasted a little bit longer and been able to run her over while she was down. But they eventually do defeat that, and from there. They through a little more deduction, some rolls, some more clues, they figure out what they actually have to do in order to defeat the puzzle, and they do defeat the puzzle.
But speaking of spells and puzzles, perhaps you want to head over to the Nerdarchy store and check out these awesome spell templates to make using spells in your game that much easier.
Yep, these 3D printed spell templates is actually one of the more popular items that we sell at the Nerdarchy store. You can go check them out, and there will be a link in the description. Right. So so they finally figure out with more clues. They realize that they have to use the urns, the bowls,
mm-hmm.
and they have to heat them in order to see what the markings are on them. And they do that, and it kind of like unlocks the rest of the puzzle for them.
So they figure out, being able to cast magic, cast the different schools of magic, and they're like, oh, we need this one, we need this one, we need this one, and they start, figuring out who can cast what in what order, and they unlock these things, and it winds up getting that much further into.
Well, when it unlocks, it opens a wall.
That's right. It opens up the false wall along the back, and they're able to go into a further area.
And in that area, it seems to be some kind of like workshop or laboratory
/ library, because Caleb and books, and of course he goes and finds the magic book.
And it ends with them being them encountering the spectral form, right?
So the book is the journal of Sift Duthar, and it goes into this wacky story of ramblings of it starts off with him rambling about the coming of war, and it goes on and on and on. And I didn't jot all of that down, but it was cool. He talks about a bounty hunter and losing his legs and all of this ridiculous stuff. They find this huge sword that they want to know something about, and they think that the sword belonged to the bounty hunter, and then as they get further into this research, this magic circle that's on the ground that they recognized as a circle of teleportation, which the players are very familiar with because they used them a lot in campaign 1 when Tiberius was part of the party. He loved that spell, but this dark, made of shadows, black and gray, spectral form begins to arise and come through the stone, through the circle, and appear before them.
Yeah, and even though the circle was actually kind of damaged, right? So that was one of the things.
Yeah, it looked like it had been like scratched or marred, so it wouldn't work properly. But like this thing appears, and its flesh, it's humanoid looking like it's in a cloak, but it's still comprised of shadow, and its gray flesh is like pulled tight against its skin, and the Matt whispers, our secrets are yours. But it was like very long and drawn out, so I don't know if the players properly heard all of that, and they're like, we're gonna die, we're gonna end the combat. And it's like, and here's where we're gonna end it.
So the question is, guys, what did you think? Episode 15. Share your thoughts down in the comments below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Check us out on nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.